Okay, so we are live. Hi, everybody. For anybody who's joining us, this is the 19th episode of Celebrate, I think, or the 20th episode of celebrating the Brand Ambassador. And this is my first of this special episode of interviewing people who used to be brand ambassadors and many other things in their career who now are creators of their own brands and owners of brands and, you know, putting it out there in the world. So have to be brand ambassadors for the products that they're working with because they are fully invested in them. So I'm really excited to have with me today my first two guests, who I've known for a long time now, April Watchel of, and I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Philip always corrects me.
Almost. Watchel.
Watchel. What is it?
Like Watchel.
Watchel. Thank you.
Yeah.
April Watchel. And H. Joseph Ehrmann, right? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Nope.
Nope. This is my name. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Ehrmann. Well, in the States
Ehrmann.
we say Ehrmann, but the German pronunciation is Ehrmann.
Ehrmann. I'm not going to be able to. Okay.
Ehrmann.
Well,
Ehrmann is good.
Ehrmann with me. So yeah, this is the thing in life that I'm still working on, is pronouncing people's names correctly. So thank you to you two for both being here. So I usually start off every show with having everybody kind of introduce themselves and kind of describe the products that you, I know April, you founded Cheeky, and Joseph, H, which I love calling you just H, and one day you're going to tell me what H stands for. I'm going to ask you.
It's Harold. I'll beat you to the punch.
It's, what is it?
It's Harold.
It's Harold. Oh, that's a good name. Prince Harry.
My friend started with H in high school and it just stuck. So
it just stuck. No, I like H as well. Obviously you do as well. So yeah, that's how everybody knows you. All right. So April, why don't you talk about introduce yourself and your product, the Cheeky?
Absolutely. So I've been in food, beverage, and hospitality for basically my entire life. I started off when I was 13, working in a little bed and breakfast in Vermont, making $3 an hour. And then it's been a long run. So I just stayed in the industry for a zillion years, really got into cocktails when it hit the Boston scene. I was in Boston for school and then working. So really, really kind of got into craft cocktails then, ended up being a brand ambassador, a cocktail instructor, a bunch of different things. And then I actually founded Cheeky as originally a different company called Swig and Swallow, maybe 4 or 5 years ago-ish at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And really the idea was, we've got mix and match bar quality syrups and juices. We say for the home bartender, but quite frankly, it's for anybody who just doesn't want to squeeze their own juice and make their own syrups. So trying to replicate bar syrups, like the actual ratios and recipes that you make behind a craft cocktail bar, trying to replicate those as exactly as possible. So it's a really foolproof and easy mixing experience. So that's me, and that's our products.
Nice, very nicely done.
Yeah.
And H, so tell us a little bit about yourself and the product that you have been working on and have out there in the market.
Well, I've been in the business since about 1986. I started as a cook on the Jersey Shore.
Oh, wow.
And I cooked for many years before I got out of the kitchen and out of the floor. But I continually worked in bars and restaurants throughout college, grad school, and a little beyond until I opened my own place. So when I graduated, I worked I bartended at Thunderbird. I did my MBA in Arizona, and when I got out, I had to bartend again for a little while until I found a job. Then I got a job. I moved to Spain. I worked in Spain for a while.
Did you really?
I lived in Madrid for a couple of years. I worked in a PR agency, learned all about PR, and came back and got into software at the end of the .com boom, just in time for everybody to lose their jobs. So I didn't make any money at it, and joined the ranks of those who lost their job, but only after I had been recruited to Silicon Valley, moved to California. And at that point, I actually started a small soup company with a high school buddy of mine called Heartland Soups. And it was a fresh refrigerated soup, all natural, low sodium, low fat, all that kind of good stuff that you could buy in the refrigerator section, which was very unique at the time. There weren't people that looked for soup in the refrigerator. It was all shelf stable. And so that was a very similar experience, a good basis for what we do with Fresh Victor and understanding refrigerated products. But that wasn't working out, so I decided to open a bar. So I got out of the product world, and opened Elixir in 2003, which I have now had for going on 18 years.
Wow. And Elixir's been around what since 1880 something?
1858.
Wow.
I'm the 12th proprietor in 162 years.
Amazing.
And so, I was not doing great with the bar either, and decided to take some chances and started squeezing fresh juice and getting rid of all artificial ingredients and buying cocktail books and starting to attend cocktail events. And there were only a few people in town doing that at the time. I was sitting at the bar at Absinthe with Chef Hollinger and Johnny Ragland, and going out to Slanted Door with Eric Adkins and seeing Doug McDonald and David Nepov and everybody behind the bar. And we all started sitting at each other's bars. And then before I knew it, Dave Nepov told me about this thing called USBG, which was like a little club of a few people.
Yeah, back then it was.
And I think there were only 3 chapters, maybe 4 back at that point. And that's just then, I launched my first cocktail menu. Things took off. The whole, started getting a lot of press attention. Allison Evans asked me to become a brand ambassador, or she asked me to help her launch Square One Organic Spirits. She and I went to the same grad school, so we had met through the alumni network. She had heard about me and came to me with the concept before launch for some feedback as a bar owner and bartender. And then she came and said, "Would you help me? Do you know anyone that would want to help me?" And I was like, "I'll do it."
Yeah,
and, I'm not making a lot of money in the bar business, so I'll take the side work. And became a brand ambassador. And there wasn't anybody. There weren't many. I didn't even know the word was. There weren't many.
What was that? What year was that?
I was 2006.
Okay, yeah, that's when this was all starting to take off.
Yeah, and that's when I met a lot of people that were early ambassadors, like your husband, and Simon and Charlotte, and there weren't that many, and they all had big budgets and big companies, and I was at this little tiny brand. But she sent me around.
That's okay. H has a partner in crime today with.
Yeah, sorry, there's a little noisemaker over here on this side of my screen.
It's all good.
So yeah, Allison sent me all over the country, just preaching organic spirits and organic cocktails, and my approach to fresh and culinary style cocktails, which back then, as you know, everybody was calling it.
It's very unique. Oh yeah, I remember telling people you need to use fresh ingredients, and they were like, "Fresh juice? That's never going to catch on."
Yeah, I always say I spent those years teaching professional bartenders how to squeeze limes and make simple syrup.
Yep.
And now I do it more for consumers on that level. But so that was really fun. I was with Square One for quite a long time, and that brand ambassador community grew in those years. And I was nominated a few times in Tales, never won, but nominated. And,
me neither. I've been nominated a couple of times, never won.
And so it was a lot of fun. And then eventually, so back then, actually, when I opened the bar, I had met Ken McKenzie. He was partners with a buddy of mine from grad school, who they were importing a tequila back then called a mate. And they hired me to do some work with them, basically, running bars for events. And long story short, Ken. That company didn't last. Ken launched another tequila. While he was at that tequila, he came up with this concept of what became Fresh Victor, which was to.
When was that?
Well, back those are 2000s. I mean, we started Fresh Victor in 2014. I think Ken he exited that tequila company and came home and said, "Let's do this as called me up and said, let's do this as its own business." And we had visited some juice factories and such together, and so all those early days of creating the product was like, all right, we have an idea. We need to get somebody to make it. We need to create a brand. We need to figure out how we're going to get it out there. And so all those, I was very much involved in all those early stages, a lot of fun. And got it together and launched it. That was 2014. Got it launched as a consumer product. And
well, we're gonna stop. I'm gonna stop you right there because I want to talk about that, because like each brand has an inspiration, right? So like there's an inspiration, it's like why you created the brand and like what you were thinking when you first like launched it. And April, I know you first started with Swig and Swallow, and you had a specific target, and then you've now morphed it into a cheeky cocktail. So let's talk about like April. Let's stop you. Like, what was your, and then April finished your story. It's like, what was your inspiration for creating Swig and Swallow when you first, and then Donald, we're definitely going to answer your question. We're going to get through this first, and then we'll talk about the awards. Yeah. So April, so what was your inspiration for creating Swig and Swallow?
So it was two things. So I was teaching cocktail classes for 5 years at six different schools. I always get confused. It's 6 different schools or 5 years. Either way, a bunch of schools in New York. And Elaine, you and I had connected about this years ago, but a bunch of different schools in New York, Astor Center, Haven's Kitchen, Murray's Cheese, Institute of Culinary Education, Audrey Claire Cook in Philadelphia. So I was teaching all these classes to consumers, and I realized that these consumers who were very, intelligent, well-educated individuals would come into the classes and feel really overwhelmed and feel like less than, like they didn't feel qualified to make cocktails as well as people in the craft cocktail world. And so that was that first insight where I was just like, why is this so intimidating to them? And how do you make cocktail education really simple and accessible to somebody, even if they've had zero training? So that was kind of that first thing, is like, how do you take the really broad, deep world of cocktails and make it simple? The second was, at the time, I was a brand ambassador for Bacardi. I was the New York-based ambassador for the rum portfolio, and then helped out launching Facundo as well. And in that context, and H can attest to this, obviously, Elaine, you can attest to this as well, but brand ambassadors were, and I believe in a lot of capacities still, are responsible for ensuring that at larger events, the craft cocktails are scaled appropriately and you're able to serve them to the crowd.
Yeah.
These two things we know don't mix perfectly well is like craft cocktail and high volume. We all know this. And so I encountered that problem as an ambassador, being like, where am I going to source my fresh lime juice from? How are we going to get gallons and gallons and gallons of simple syrup or agave syrup or 2-to-1 honey syrup or anything like that? And so those two insights were like, how do I make this simple and relatively foolproof? I would have to say that what we had with Swig and Swallow, while it was a good idea, I don't think it was the right idea for us. And I don't think I necessarily need to deep dive into what it was, but the initial version of it, well, just because it gets complicated, but the initial version of it was cocktail batching and delivery, inclusive of garnishes for spirits companies and catering companies. And
I remember that actually, because that was a big problem for me. It's like, I remember okay, we have an event coming. Who can batch, who can make all the juice that we need? And it started becoming more of a business for people, but back in the initial day. But I do remember that. That was a hardship. Like, it was like, I don't want to be juicing all that juice.
We were doing it out of Elixir, out of the back room. All my ambassador friends would come to town and be like, how many gallons of sour do you need? Sure, we'll make it.
Yeah, it was a big business.
And it's honestly, it's still a problem, right? And you think about all of the people that we know within the spirits world, some who are, very accomplished craft cocktail bartenders, some who are very high volume people, some who are brand managers or event managers who've never had to deal with the liquid side of things. And so even sourcing the ingredients, let alone finding the proper batching containers, measuring them appropriately, and then, then funneling them back into bottles, throwing in speed pours, like it's just a big complex mess. So that was the original idea. And basically what Cheeky is now has evolved from that initial problem set. So the initial target really was that at-home consumer and the event professional who is looking to provide a high quality experience for their attendees. And that quite frankly is in many ways still who our clientele is. But I think it's broader because, again, with our lemon and lime juice, it's 100% juice. It's really easily understandable to the mass consumer. So even though that's kind of still our target, I really think that it's like whoever wants to buy, we're happy to sell it to.
Right. That makes sense. And H, for you, what was the goal for the Fresh Victor, getting out there? You started talking about it, like, the idea behind it and who you were targeting.
It was very much like April was saying, it was consumer oriented. It was the idea that people needed to, Ken had this idea as he was developing a tequila company in Texas and seeing, just seeing the amount of margaritas they were selling, and that people didn't know how to make good margaritas and needed something really solid. And I had the same experience as April. I had started the Boothby Center in San Francisco in 2009, which was an education center that I built out. And it's all really comes back to that education. Like April, I was teaching lots of consumer cocktail classes, which was born out of the fact that I signed this lease with Doug and McDonald and Jeff Hollinger, and it was a super expensive lease around the corner from the Twitter building before Twitter was anything. And then all of a sudden it was Twitter or something. And, we had this 5-year lease, and Jeff went off and opened Comstock Saloon, and Duggan launched his Pisco, and I was stuck there managing this thing. And I found, and we did it as a nonprofit. We created this nonprofit to run San Francisco Cocktail Week, which we had founded in 2007. And we had started making some money with it. So we spent that money on building this thing in 2008, and then the market crashed and brands stopped spending like they did.
Wow.
And we were stuck with this lease. So I realized that I could pay the rent doing corporate classes. And so I started doing the corporate classes, which was, a few $1,000s at a time rather than selling one ticket at a time to a class. But either way, I was teaching consumers, and I was making those same realizations that people, even when they love to learn the lesson of how to make a sour and how to make a 3, 4, or 5 ingredient cocktail, but they still, after they learn it, they still want it to be easier.
Right.
And so that's the genius of products like ours is, high quality, designed by bartenders who know what they're doing, and good palettes and high quality ingredients. And then for the consumer, it's just open a bottle and pour. And, it really never existed before. And you look back to the days of like powdered sour mix from the mid 20th century. And then
that giant jug of Sour X, what was it?
Holland.
All the bars had, it was, that stuff was disgusting, whatever it was called. It was like a greenish yellow liquid that used to be sold.
Neon.
Yeah.
So, it was initially that for the consumers. We were in a 32-ounce bottle. Everything mixes 2 to 1. And, Ken was out doing tastings at supermarkets every day. And that's a bite in the ass, It
is.
And then we saw the grocery market going downhill and chains closing, and people moving to online ordering and stuff. And so we actually started focusing on realizing that there was an opportunity to provide these same kinds of levels of efficiency to a vast amount of bars and restaurants that need that same kind of help, because they don't have either just the bartenders that can make complex drinks, or there's a lack of consistency from unit to unit in national accounts, lack of consistency in product when it's, seasonality of product. Limes are good at parts of the years and bad at other parts of the year, and price fluctuations and spoilage, and all these are business concerns for operators. So we launched this entire other focus on-premise operators selling our stuff in bulk, and started building accounts that way, and to the point where we finally said, groceries going downhill, let's kill consumer and focus on on-premise. And that's when I came back involved with the company in 2018 and started using my network and focusing on on-premise stuff.
Oh, wow.
We killed that, and we went back to consumer, and now we have both.
now you have both, which makes sense, especially in this current market. It's like some people just don't want to do all that work and that extra work, or hiring people come in and do it. And if you could have a consistent product that's reasonably priced, why not? So that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely understand with the consumer mindset, because I think of myself as somebody, like when it comes to cooking, I'm so lazy. I'm like so ridiculously lazy, and I've taken cooking classes and I love them, but at the same time, I just want to get the kit and just have everything there, and I just throw it all together, and it takes me 15 minutes and I'm good. I don't want to do all the extra work. Cocktails, I don't mind doing the extra work, but for me, cooking is that. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
That totally happened to me in the pandemic. Like I literally began drinking the Kool-Aid, because like a lot of career bar people, I don't really drink much at home. I don't, I have I have a killer home bar, beautiful antique Victorian, antique silver tools and everything. When I drink, I have a nice dram of whiskey. I don't make cocktails.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm locked in the house and we're launching this consumer product, and I've got to have the product in my house. So I really started using it, and I had to like create recipes so that we had marketing content and recipes to share with people. And so I really started using it. And then it was exactly the thing. All of a sudden I realized, like, we're having dinner and I'm not working. And I'm like, I'm gonna have a margarita with dinner. Boom, boom.
Yeah. This is great. There you go. And
I was like, wow, our product is awesome.
You became the ambassador for your own product. And that's where your love came around. All right, so let's answer Donald's question. So hi, Donald. As a craft spirit judge, taster, what advice do you give suppliers, brand ambassadors regarding spirit competitions and awards? I mean, on my personal one, I say enter them, but enter the right one. Making sure that the judges are legit. Like if you look through the judges list and you've never heard of these people, and are those awards that you're getting, where do they advertise them? Like, is it going to help you sell your products? I always advise my clients that there's definitely, enter enter product competitions, because awards do sell for the regular consumer who's walking into a liquor store. If they don't know anything and there's like 20 whiskeys and the one that has the award might just, but that's, might push them over, be like, all right, well, somebody else thinks this is good. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and that's that same kind of thing. Say that, what does it cost? 500, 600 on the high end to enter a bottle. If you get, 20 people across the country, see that you've covered your cost.
Yeah, agreed.
It's worth it. But it is right. Like, I think that, there are so many competitions now. So that is definitely a little bit of a bear for people to decide which ones to enter. Like you said, I think it comes down to the judges and really how good of a business that competition is. How well did they develop their brand? How good looking are their medals? What does their brand look like? Does the name of the competition mean anything to anyone who just hears it? All of those things are like, whether or not they have any value.
Right. Are consumers going to care? Like if you get an award for San Francisco Spirit Award, most people have heard of that. I mean, I think consumers probably heard of it. Like it's been around long enough. We have judged American Distilling Institute, which is small craft brands, but at least they give feedback, like so the distiller can learn, like, all right, this is the thought. They need to go back to the drawing board. I have had to do this for some of my clients. I've had to research all of the, for Philip, actually, I did it for Old Dutch and Ever. I spent, just some time just looking through all the spirit competitions in America as well as in Europe. So it's like, what country do you want to launch in? What is the relevance? Definitely who the judges are, so if it's a consumer one and it's a bunch of consumers, you're like, well, who are these people judging it? But maybe you want their feedback. Are they going to give you a bunch of feedback of what they like? Would they serve this to their friends? And a bunch of people tell you that, and that's important to you. That's what you want to hear, because that's your target market. A certain age and a certain gender. Like, great. Like that's it's like I want to know what 20 women judges are that are from 30 to 60. They love my product. That's who I'm selling to. I got a winner. But I don't know if many judge competitions give you that kind of feedback. I mean, have you entered your products in any? Is there ones for mixers?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we won 5 double golds at San Francisco and 2 golds across our 7 products. That's the only one we've entered.
It's actually interesting that you say that. So we have not entered ours in anything, and I think this is also obviously Fresh Victor's been around for a bit longer. So with Cheeky Eats, we launched into the first wave of COVID last year, so we just had our 1-year anniversary.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I mean, that being said, I think whether it be for spirits or for mixers, being able to hit both trade and consumer would be great. So like, as you were saying, there are several competitions where they hold some weight with both trade as well as consumer. And so if I were to do so, I probably would enter in one that I felt like it could hit both categories. In our case, again, I feel like the nature of our marketing has been very like organic grassroots, and there's infinitely more things that we could and should do in the future. It's just, we've been managing kind of like, what is the littlest that we can do to get us the farthest right now? And so it just hasn't honestly come up in a major way yet, but I'm sure in the future it will.
No, because it makes sense. It's also something to talk about, right? So it's like every time something happens for your brand, like if you win a competition, it's like a reason to do a press release. You know, it's a reason to put something out there into the world. Anthony, I'm not sure I understand your comment. In every competition, don't use products outside the brand portfolio.
Do you mean don't mix with like a spirit that's not yours, or if you're a spirit, what are you? Anthony Desario, what are you talking about?
sorry you can't chat with us live, but if you could explain it, type it a little clearer, that would be great. I mean, I definitely wouldn't enter a brand that wasn't in my portfolio into a competition because that wouldn't make any sense. But I would love to hear more, Anthony. All right. So what are some of the things, obviously, launching your product comes with some headaches, right? So what are the top 2 things or 2 or 3 things that might keep you up at night, like that worry you about having your own brand? Because obviously it's a lot of work.
Who should go first?
Go ahead, April.
And Elaine, do we mean right now, or do we mean like at the beginning?
Maybe at the beginning and maybe right now. So maybe like since you've launched Tiki, like, obviously you've launched it during a pandemic. So is there some things that really stress you out because it's yours,
Yeah. So I think the initial biggest concern or headache was so the initial was
Anthony, that's like a cocktail competition. But I understand your point. If you're talking about cocktail competition, we were talking about Anthony. We were talking about spirit competition. So when you enter your product actually into a like the San Francisco Spirit Awards or American Distilling Institute, those competitions. But that is definitely a good point. If you're ever in a cocktail competition, never use a competitor's product.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen. And you're so
Me too.
right. I've seen people enter the Smirnoff competition and writing on there like Grey Goose. And I'm like, well, you just failed out of that. that was silly. We're going to get to that, Scott. That's a great question. And we are going to talk about that. So April, go ahead.
Yeah. So initially I would say the biggest question that I had is, are we right with the product? Like, is this something that people will like and want? And then just figuring out, again, there's a billion things that you need to figure out in terms of marketing distribution, right? So it was just really like, are we barking up the right tree? Because again, people will say all the lovely, nice things, and then you could just have nobody purchasing your product. So that was the first thing. When we got that validated and we said, yes, there's demand for it, people like it, there's demand for it in a bunch of different potential revenue.
How did you validate it? How did you get it validated?
I mean, we just started selling. I mean, I just made the website, did obviously the logo and label, started producing product, started just organically, again, sharing out about it on Instagram. And we've actually done almost 0 actual sales. Like that's actually one of my next steps, is actually bringing on even a single person as a sales force. But we've had an incredible year, and almost all of it has just been inbound requests.
Wow.
So that was validation. Yeah. It's validation. Yeah. So that's that. I would say in terms of the things that are most concerning for me right now is I've been very much back and forth on, do we raise capital or not? I think potentially, and I'm sure H can speak to this, but in this industry, you tend to raise at some point, whether it be just a small family and friends round, or if somebody takes on investment from a strategic or from venture capital or whatever later on. But that's one thing. It's the range of decisions that I make now, and like even so far as like who I'm hiring. Am I hiring people we have money to hire right now? Am I hiring people where I think they're infinitely senior to me and my capabilities? Those are decisions that obviously are very clearly tied to the financing plan. So that's a really big one. And I think the speed at which we want to scale is another one, and that's also directly related to that. So I think that those are kind of the core ones. The final sort of closure on that is, and again, I'm sure H can speak to this as well, but it's evident to me that I have great strengths in some areas and tremendous weaknesses in some areas. And being a solopreneur, I mean, I have a team, but like being the person who is at the end of the day responsible for the performance and the success or failure of the business, that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, and thinking like, am I making the right decisions on this? Especially if you're not bouncing off of a lot of very senior experienced people, that is a concern to me. So I'm trying to shore myself up.
You need a consultant CEO. You need like a guy who's like who volunteers his time. You need somebody to kind of. I might have a few people for you actually.
And I'd love to talk about it. I mean, I have an amazing friend who I'm sure, I think Elaine probably knows her, but Bridget Fertile has been doing our outsourced CFO work. I have a lot of allies, as you can imagine, both in this space, but like broadly in CPG, who've been helping out. But I do think I need like an advisory group where it's like multiple people who I'm constantly pressure testing ideas with, just because I think it's like, it is the way that you come to a better, more solid thought process. So anyway, I'll stop talking, but that's
no. I think that was great. Those are three really legit words. And I know HR situation is different, and Anthony will definitely get to that question, which is, I know you are the chief mixologist and help create it. So you're not the founder, but I know, so what are your worries like about the product? Like, do you have you're financially involved in the product as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice because like I see what April's saying about like her position. I have that position. I have that position at Elixir, right? That's my baby. That's like, that's especially given the last year, I have to bring that back. I have to rebuild it. I have to make a lot of decisions on how I'm going to do that. What I really do enjoy actually in my role with Fresh Victor is that we do have a great team, and Ken has done a phenomenal job of building that team, where we do have some really amazing senior advisors who bring years of experience in building consumer products and building companies and building brands. And so there's a lot of stuff whereas I've, built my own companies and done all this, I've never built a product company before. And so the amount of stuff that I learn on a daily basis is amazing, and the people that I work with. So I love that growing environment that I'm in now, because I got to a point with my bar going into being in my 18th year, where I don't have a team. I mean, I have an amazing team of my team in the bar, but I don't have like a management team and a whole lot of advisors and stuff. So I make all those decisions on my own. And I talk to people about how to improve things in the bar business. I'm like, it's been almost 20 years since I've worked in another bar or restaurant. So you learn. I worked in 18 different bars and restaurants before I opened my own. So I learned a lot from a lot of other people. But then it just stopped, and then you learn from yourself. Mm-hmm. So in this environment, I'm learning a lot. And so what I get the luxury of having a more limited role than CEO is that I get to focus on what my specialization is. And so I worry about things like, I'm very proud about our product quality. And what keeps me up is the challenge of conveying the true efficacy of this product. I always say what we really provide is a solution. It's a business solution. It's not just a product. And I obviously am much more focused on the on-premise with my background. And so I can talk to operators about how our product quality, how the sanitation, few human touch points, especially right now, how that's very important to get fresh juice, and stability and lack of spoilage, and savings on labor, and savings on all that stuff I was saying earlier about variability and seasonality. So there's all those things that, how do I get that to people when the on-premise world, especially in the national accounts world, is so, first of all, for people looking to do something, you realize that the national accounts is a long game, and it's hard to get into these accounts. You're talking to somebody who's got 100 restaurants. You sign that deal, and that's a game changer. That's a lot of cash flow getting into those accounts. And so I was just talking with some of our friends in Las Vegas the other week, and Max Solano in Las Vegas was saying how, like, in Vegas it's all about the pool season. So they used to start talking about pool season in February and March. He's like, now they're talking about it in December. And so you're working on trying to get on menus in December that are going to launch in March or April or May. And then, and that, it goes that way.
You have to scale up as well.
Everybody's on a different schedule. So, you could be like, hey, I want to show you my products. And like, oh, we just made our menus for the year last week. So give me a call next September.
Wow. That's a huge change. I want to talk about, Scott actually threw out a great question. Scott Barnum, thanks for turning it. because we are going to talk about this. You know, you both were brand ambassadors in the past. You know, so you understand how how it works to be a brand ambassador. I mean, obviously things keep changing, but the role kind of stays, you know, the same. As I've learned from interviewing now over 38 brand ambassadors, everybody's role is different. Everybody's company operates differently. You know, would you hire brand ambassadors to represent, if you could afford them, right? So ideally, if you could have the budget for them, and also, would you? It's like, okay, I have the budget, and would I have a choice? Would I hire a brand ambassador? And to Scott's question, you know, who do you think is the most appropriate brand ambassador for your brand? Like, what skill sets would they have that make you consider like this is the person that would be ideal to representing, you know, Cheeky?
So I've also done a very decent amount of interviewing people for brand ambassador roles.
Yes, you have, and helped managing programs for my past employees.
Yes, and Elaine, I don't know how much you want to get into that or not, but anyway, done some of that.
You have a lot of experience. April has a lot of experience of interviewing a lot of people and you know, helping develop a program for brand ambassadors.
Yes, for this style.
Large companies.
Yes, for large companies. I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense for large companies. For a very small, scrappy company like myself, and again, I think this is an interesting thing for like entrepreneurs in general, but if you start small and you start scrappy, I feel like there's some point at which you transition out of that super scrappy mentality. And I'm actually a little bit worried, to be honest, of that moment when we get like millions of dollars in the bank and we're just like, doesn't matter, you know, like we've got money to spare. Because I think there's a tremendous amount of benefit that comes with having that really scrappy mentality of like, this dollar or this penny has to work for me. So in that regard, and I mean no offense to any of my lovely, amazing brand ambassador friends, I think for a little brand like myself, it has to be a sales role. If it's going to be a role that's interfacing with people where theoretically sales happen at some point, it has to be something where there's an actual KPI around sales. And that's just because, again, we're not rolling in like $100 million where we're just like, you know, like just whoever gets the P&E,
print the money, yeah.
Exactly. That being said, I think if, you know, for other brands where, again, perhaps there's like a very high profile individual who can connect with and really influence the thought leadership within a space, I still totally endorse that. I think just for us, probably not anytime soon, but that being said, as I had mentioned earlier, we are looking to kind of bring in our first sales role in the near future. Would
they be a mixologist as well? Like somebody who has that skill set, since you are a mixer, like yes. Skill set wise, because you are a mixer, like what would the skill sets would you look for? So they have to know sales.
Yeah. So I think from my perspective, I'd want them to have background in the cocktail world. They need to be able to sort of softly educate and make people feel like the consumer is the expert, right? It's like we want to empower and support any of our clients or potential clients in feeling like they fully understand how to use our product. So there's that. I'd want them to be incredibly responsive. Elaine, you and I talked about this in terms of like what we look for in brand ambassadors, and being responsive, being organized, understanding etiquette for email, understanding how to present yourself, whether in person or on a Zoom meeting, how to handle a client like objections, for example. These sort of elements of professionalism, those are non-negotiables for me, because we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take delivering excellent customer service seriously. And we want people to have like an excellent experience at every touch point with the brand. So for me, it's those elements. As far as like gender and color and all those things, I mean, we have a predominantly woman, female team. We've leaned very much LGBTQIA, but I'm really fully open to anyone who's got a great, amazing attitude. And again, who really cares and is a hustler and is just a good person. So
hustler is a great word,
but
professional as well. And H, I know you've been a brand ambassador for Square One back in the day, almost the same time I was a brand ambassador, where being it was such a new role. And, for Fresh Victor, which is, it is a mixer company as well. And you're out there, helping move it and making your connections. Would Fresh Victor, the company, hire a brand ambassador, or would it be more like April, like a salesperson out there in the world?
I think, a key component to being, the word brand ambassador, where that a lot of where that it evolved to is really became very much a sales role, right? For back when I was doing it, you were doing it, that we were more influencers, which was not back then. But it wasn't about, like, I went to markets to do, we did our share of work with, right? Getting somebody's car and go hit 5 or 10 accounts in a day and just tell them about the brand and tell them all about it. But ultimately, I didn't have KPIs. I didn't have I wasn't responsible for managing accounts and getting reorders and all of that. And I specifically didn't want that, because I did sales and software. And when doing enterprise sales and software with, 9 to 15 month sales cycles, when you're in sales, you have to be managing every part of the cycle at all times, getting new customers, closing deals, working them through. If you're not doing that efficiently, you're not a good salesperson. And so, because the deals have to roll. Yep. I don't like doing that personally. You have to know how you like to work and what you're good at, what you're not good at. I am a consummate networker, and I have a vast network around the world in our industry. I've built a name for myself. And so I think that I'm essentially the brand ambassador for Fresh Victor now. And my role is very much similar to what I did with Square One, and what I still do with the BNIC. I'm a cognac educator. I used to work for WERSPA as a rum educator and representing the Caribbean rum category. So I still work in cognac. I'm still representing the brand of cognac in my education and all that. And it's all about, to me, education. Like we have a very unique product in that, this is the small size, but it's people think it's just juice, and I have to tell them it's not juice, it's a mixer. And so even just that alone is a little bit of education. I've got to let them know what this is and how to use it. And that goes for consumers as much as it does on premise. And so we need that in a brand ambassador role. You need to be able to, like April said, have an understanding of mixology and culinary concepts. And with us having both an on-premise channel and a consumer channel, they're like completely two different businesses. I have to influence both and understand what the consumer needs are and what the on-premise needs are, and convey to them these messages of why should you buy us? The why is the big thing. And until they understand that, they're not going to buy.
No, the why is everything. You have to define your why in order to sell any single product, because that is the conversation you're going to have over and over and over again. Because they're like, why do I need this? Like, I could press this myself. I could do all these things. I can have the combinations. I can put together agave syrup and lime juice. Why do I need yours? Like, and it is hard. Defining that's probably one of the hardest things you have to do as an entrepreneur, and to be able to. But it's so important.
And I think we could expand. I would love to be able to get to the point where I could build a team of brand ambassadors. Right now, we're at the point where we're looking to build a team of salespeople. And what I can do with the salespeople is help them bridge the gap. So they need to be good at sales. They need to be able to, like I said, run that cycle and keep the sales going. They don't need to be experts in cocktails and stuff. They need to understand it. They need to be able to speak it. They need to be able to make some. I can teach them all of that. I always tell people, as with my bartenders, and you've heard, I can teach a monkey to bartend, but I can't teach an asshole to be a nice person.
which is always a great line. And actually, Nicola from Fernet said it great. He's like, and also Lacey Hawkins said it to me from Monkey 47. She said, you can make, if you speak the right way and you work with your sales reps the right way, you can make them mini advocates for your brand. You can make them, if they're, if they're just working for you, obviously they are, but if they have multiple products that they're working on, you can endorse them with the information that they feel excited about your brand, as excited as you are. And if you arm them with the ability to be able to make cocktails and to understand it, I used to do for Diageo, I used to travel around the country, and actually April took this program over when I left, which was teaching distributors how to make an old fashioned or a Manhattan, and to understand how like Bullet worked in that product, or how Don Julio worked in a margarita, so they could understand what a good drink tasted like. It got them excited. It was a very good program for them. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
I kind of think of it also like when I was in college, I worked at Disney World. One of the 18 restaurants I worked in. I worked at Tony's Town Square Cafe on Main Street in the Magic Kingdom as a busboy. Nice. And when you start working at Disney, they put you into Disney school. Back then, it was 5 days of learning all about Disney. It had nothing to do with your job. You had to know Disney.
Wow.
So it's all about that customer service, and so that if any guest asks you any question, you have a bank of knowledge to be able to answer that. You're picking up somebody's spaghetti and they're asking you about Dumbo. You got to answer the question.
That's great.
But what Disney has is, that's on stage and off stage at Disney. If you're in the customer eye, you're on stage. If you're backstage, you're off stage. And at every portal to backstage, there's a phone. At least this is the way it was in '89 when I worked there. But and if you don't know an answer, you go and you pick up that phone, and there's somebody on the other end of that line that has an answer.
That's amazing. The Disney hotline was the phone red, by the way? Like a light flaring or something?
It's always next to a mirror, so that and I did this at Elixir. We have this back in the back house at Elixir. I have this mirror, and it says exactly what the mirror says in Disney. Smile, it's a good reflection on you, or something like that. So you can always check the mirror before you go on stage. You always have a thing there to get information. So I kind of look at myself as the guy on the other end of that phone. When we're building the sales team, and we've got people in our company that don't know anything about cocktails, and suddenly, whether it's a customer or an investor or something, and they've got a question about the drinks, I can get that answer them immediately. And so if we build a team of ambassadors, they have to be able to do that in order to enable the sales process.
I think that's great. No, I think it's a great thing, because one of the things I've learned in the last couple of months is some of the most empowered ambassadors have direct connections to the master distillers. Like literally they have master distiller on speed dial, and they can text them anytime with any question and just ask them. So they've been on stage, people have asked them a question, they're like, I don't know, but give me a minute. Text, get the answer and get the answer back. And it is empowering to them. It's like, you know what? I have that connection. And of course, people are impressed like that. Wow, like you're dialed right into the source. So being able to connect with you. Actually, Anthony has one question for April, and he also has one question for you, H. I'm going to start with H first. You're talking because he's actually talking about your product. I'll let you read it.
Yeah. And
it's not a camel, it's a llama, isn't it?
It's a llama. Yeah, it is a llama.
The emu.
That is Victor. I always say, like, we've got 7 products right now. The Mexican lime and agave and the lemon sour, or what I would say I describe them as the workhorses, right? We got a lime sour and a lemon sour. Those are the workhorses of sour cocktails, of juicy cocktails. And so, those are a bit easier to sell. We really, Mexican lime and agave out of the gate was our big seller, and still is. That's just margaritas all day long.
It's delicious. I used it the other day and made myself a cocktail. So well done.
And then we did actually, the lemon sour was the most recent product launch. When I came back in 2018, I said we got to have a lemon sour. So I designed that, and all the other products are designed to be pretty well balanced on a sweet sour level, so that everything is meant to mix 2 to 1 or 1 to 1, real simple with a spirit, and that's the easy part, right? But when you start layering liqueurs and simple syrups and custom made syrups on it, it starts to lean sweet after 1 or 2 additions. And so the sour in particular, the lemon sour, I designed that to be more sour than equally balanced, so that, because with lemon sour, other than a whiskey sour or Tom Collins, you're going to probably build more flavor on it, whether you're adding fruit or liqueurs or Benedictine or,
That makes sense.
It needed to balance that way a little bit. And so consumers really didn't grasp onto that one so much. It's funny, like they Mexican lime and agave, margaritas, but lemon sour, they don't really know. They don't necessarily trigger to whiskey sour or Tom Collins, as easy as that is, let alone the others. But
I have to say, H, when we had our whiskey sour with for Swig and Swallow also, again, it was lemon and simple syrup. Similar thing. I think people were just like, oh, it's basically lemonade. So I hear you with that one, where they're like,
think
oh,
about
I can make that.
How many people drink whiskey sour? Like how? Yeah,
still
exactly.
a lot.
So, a lot. But you think about it at the bar, like the number one selling cocktails, if you're going through, it's like, Philip and I were talking about, because he wants to make a canned Collins. And I'm like, who orders Collins? Like, most bar people, it's not a very popular drink. I was like, if you call it a lemonade, like a Geneva lemon, that would make sense. People understand lemonade, but people don't like Collins. Are like, oh, that's what my grandpa drank back in the day. I mean, it's a great cocktail. I drink a Collins. We know what a Collins is, but the consumer is like, what's a Collins? Depending on their age, right? So
totally. Yeah. Those other 5 flavors that we have are the unique ones that he's referring to. Pineapple and ginger. You got pineapple and ginger, jalapeno lime, cucumber lime, 3 citrus and mint, and cactus pear and pomegranate. So if you think about all 5 of those have a sour base. They've got some lemon and or lime in them as the sour component. And then those other flavors create that next layer of flavor complexity. And those are the things that consumers do grab hold of, because of either they look at pineapple and ginger and like, I love ginger. Or I love pineapple, or pineapple and ginger. That sounds great together, or jalapeno lime. That, as I always said, in cocktails, heat and smoke are very divisive. You either love them or hate them. And if you're in the middle, there's got to be just the right balance. And so our jalapeno lime is super popular because we really nailed that balance where it's just hot enough for the heat freaks and it's not too hot for a lot of other people. And if
I made myself a spicy margarita the other day. It was
and it's a great blender because it blends with all of our other products to make each of them spicy if you want something spicy. And so we can create layers of flavor with that. So it's really built as kind of a system to hit both give us enough products to make a wide range of classic cocktails and variations on them. Like I'll use the pineapple ginger to make pisco sours. The cactus pear and pomegranate, I would say, is a great substitute for cranberry juice. So
interesting.
I have a cactus
I'm going to give that. I'm going to whirl. I'm going to try to make myself. I like making myself a Cosmo every once in a while.
Yeah, the cactus Cosmo is super popular.
That would be really good. All right. So Anthony also has a question for you, April. So the previous part is cheeky. I know you kind of talked about this before, but maybe Anthony missed it.
Well, I think I didn't answer this particular question. So, I think there's 2 things. I think there's the why and the how. So with the why, it was, having been a first-time entrepreneur, having multiple years experience running Swig and Swallow, and seeing the things that worked and the things that didn't work. There were a number of things, primarily focusing on manufacturing and the cold supply chain, that I didn't see getting much easier for us at any point. Plus the fact, again, that I learned so much in that 4-year period and was like, I think the product that I want to be selling is not what we're currently selling. And I think that there were some educational issues around it. So there were a whole host of, it was basically a list I was keeping for 4 years, being like, gotta fix that, want to fix that, hate that, and then it all just came to a head. We actually had one really challenging production run where the breakage percentage was just like through the roof. And I just was like, you know what, enough is enough. And so I just made the decision, this was in 2019 sometime, made the decision to spend, I think it was like 2 months still, fulfilling orders and going about our business, but really just thinking like, do I still love this thing? Do I still care so deeply about this thing that I'm willing to work absolutely insane hours, deal with, again, some of the great wins and some of the huge challenges that come with running your own business. And after after a couple of months, I just said, I still love this. I think there's still something really worthwhile here. Like my reason to do this, which is again to help facilitate these amazing moments for people, to spread conviviality, to make it easier and more enjoyable to connect with friends and family. All those things are still true. So basically just took a deep breath and was like, all right, pulling this thing apart, gonna put it back together. And then just started taking steps to do so. Again, speaking to anybody who might be in their sort of own trough of sorrow with their entrepreneurial journey, taking a step back, getting some perspective is really helpful before kind of diving into that next phase, because it would have been, I guess, end of 2019. I'm like super chill. I'm going to do this at my own pace. I'm going to, get a branding agency and I'm going to do slowly. And then of course, coronavirus hits in March as we were preparing for our late April launch, and just decided to launch a month early because we saw so many of our bartender friends all of a sudden out of work. And I thought that there could be some way to do a bartender affiliate program with the launch of Cheeky that could be mutually beneficial. So ultimately that was kind of why. The how was just, we had the facility still. So just, starting to learn like what the requirements were to do a shelf stable product and to do the syrups and juices separately, as opposed to previously we were doing an HPP fully blended cocktail mixer and we were bringing it to a tolling facility for processing. So there were some certainly manufacturing things that needed to be done, but in terms of like the branding website, again, our fulfillment, like we have 6 loading docks, all the major carriers pick up here every day. A lot of those logistics were pretty streamlined and easy to transfer over.
But I was gonna say the rebranding is a big thing, and then also you had new bottles. You had, that's a lot, and then new formulations. That takes a lot. Is it just you formulating, or is somebody else? Who's your tasting panel?
Well, yes, it's just me. But again, it's pretty like it's 100% lemon juice and 100% lime juice in terms of formulation. Those are
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I was thinking about the syrup.
Yeah, well, no, but so on the syrups, yes, it was me. I mean, I went back and forth with. So, for example, Cornell is where I think people from across the country send their samples and documentation to get scheduled processes. So for our particular process. And so I went back and forth with them a number of times. Like they rejected a bunch of my samples and they said, this is what's wrong with it. You've got to redo it, whatever. But then we actually have some limited edition ones that I have had my team taste, and they're all approved from the tasting perspective. And so we're just got to take the next steps on those as well.
No, that's great. I mean, those are some of the hardest things. I getting it down, making it shelf stable is extremely hard. And where you don't lose that freshness coming out of that I definitely know. And then the packing, but you already had the packers already set up, right? That's the packers, or you guys are the packers. The fulfillment center.
Yeah. So here's another thing. And again, I'm just going to frame this as like advice to anyone who might be starting their own thing. I think for our type of business, if you're able to be in a legal, so in a commercial facility, I think if you have very little capital, it's probably, it is definitely most cost efficient to do it yourself, like to do the manufacturing yourself. What we've noticed over the past year is, we had gotten to a point where it was like, do I want to be running a manufacturing facility and building out $1 million line, or do I want to be outsourcing some of that? And I know food entrepreneurs always have this issue, which is like, do I do it in-house? Do I outsource it? So we're actually on our 3rd co-packer right now. Well, technically we've got 2 right now.
That's the word I was looking for, co-packer.
Yeah, so we now have 2. We also recently, and when I say recently, I mean this week, got a new filling machine for our facility for the limited edition as well, because in terms of the volumes that we'll be doing, I don't think I want to work that in to the production of, the 8 normal SKUs for volumes, for a whole bunch of reasons. And so we're just trying to have what they call, it's actually learned this recently, they call it a 3-dimensional supply chain. So instead of having one single solution, you have multiple options to make sure that you never kind of fall flat and fall on your face at any point. So we're doing both technically.
Wow. I mean, I was gonna say and I know I'm getting to a point where I'm gonna have to wrap it out because I have to catch the plane. Yeah. But I was gonna say, for you guys, do you use a co-packer? Are you guys doing it yourself? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, we have a co-packer that's actually a partner. in the business, and they're a family, multi-generational family business that it makes incredible products and has great capacity. We're not going to have any supply issues in the future, and it's definitely one of those things that having the right partners across the board and whatever functionality or role they serve is really important in building any business, right? So having a supply line that is solid, consistent, bankable, reliable, responsive, effective, that takes so many worries off the table.
Yeah, co-packers are not easy to find. So that's a big thing, because if you Google co-packers, it doesn't just come up.
No, there were really only a couple companies in the country that could do what we wanted them to do, and so
same here.
That's not easy, and so getting the right one that's proven over the years to be the right one on many other levels as well has been phenomenal in allowing us to focus on the challenges of building the brand and building the business.
No, that's fantastic. Anthony, I don't know if we have time but we can answer. I was going to say, because I have to run and catch a plane, but I think this is for both of you. It's RTD. Can you have friends? That's a good question, actually. Does anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, we face this a lot. We've been in and out of the RTD conversation a lot. I mean, first of all, we, is on the advice level to smaller companies. You need to stay focused. You need to build your product before you build your next product. And so branching off into RTDs right now is not our focus, but it certainly could be a potential expansion of the brand down the road. But it's the products themselves, I do not see as much of a challenge in the on-premise. Just speaking as an on-premise operator, they don't sell as well. You go to a bar to get a cocktail made, not to buy a cocktail in a can.
I mean, I do see them in the dive bars. Like, I'll go there now. I saw them a lot, especially during the pandemic. It was like, White Claws on the menu and High Noons and stuff like that. They're definitely, which always surprises me, because if you could buy them for like a couple of bucks at your local store, but now you're paying $10 for them. But then again, same thing with buying cocktails, I guess. But you're paying for the skill.
Off-premise, like in retail, it's definitely a challenge, because and April knows this too. That being, as she was saying, we face the challenges of refrigerated distribution. It's not just the distribution. It's a reason nobody's done this before. It's the hardest part of the business is getting this fresh juice across country, or getting it out into the channels, and having it move before it's no longer fresh. And so when we get into supermarkets, the supermarkets have the decision of, do I put this in the juice section, or do I put this in the refrigerated wine? And so we want to be in refrigerated wine. We want to be next to the bottles of spirits, so people can get the concept of grab and go. And put us there, then we often end up next to the RTDs. And so, our tagline is craft cocktails made easy. And RTDs are kind of like that one further step of easy. You just open it and drink it. But fortunately, on that level, they're just not as good, and they're not going to be.
No, they can't be. I mean, as somebody who's now drank a lot of RTDs, and I do a lot of reviewing of them, and there's some great ones out there, but it is not the same. It's kind of like, I think your guys' product, and this is my own, it's like, I don't know if you ever hear the story. It's like the 1950s. They made a cake mix for housewives, right? So it's a famous story, right? So the cake mix, and nobody wanted to use it because they felt it was cheating. You just had to pour it into a bowl and add some water. So they changed the formula where they actually had to add eggs and water, and I think oil, and then that sold, because then the housewife didn't feel like she was being too lazy, that she actually made it from scratch, right? Yes. It was like, but just getting the box and pouring it in, they tasted exactly the same, but a person felt better about adding all the other things in to feel like they did something.
And that's the customer experience. You talk about customer experience. The customer experience is open and drink. That's different than, hey, look what I made.
Yeah. So at home, I think it makes sense. If I'm going to the park, grabbing a case, a 6-pack of RTDs that I enjoy, that makes sense to me. Like, that's an easy one. But at home, I want to make something. April, did you have any thoughts about it?
I mean, I agree with everything both of you guys said. I also would say that like, don't underestimate the value of brand. You know, there are certain things where it's like, sure, like, do I care the brand of napkins I'm going to stock at home? Or do I care, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think about another commodity. I think similarly, it's like, you know, anybody who loves Supreme clothes, for example, or whatever, a DVF wrap dress or something like that. It's not just about the product. It's also about all the other associations you have with brand. And so for me, it's not like, am I concerned about like RTD cocktails completely wiping out, you know, the like people's desire to drink actual cocktails? I mean, firstly, again, there's so much fragmentation in the marketplace anyway, that I think there's so much ground to gain without really damaging anybody else, even direct competitors, or again, cross like category from mixers to RTD. So again, I'm not concerned about it at all. And I also would say that, again, people will like their own brands for their own reasons. And it's much more about like, are we doing the best we can to deliver the promise that we're saying we're delivering? And if we're doing that, it's hopefully nothing the competition does actually matters to us.
No, I think that makes sense. It's like brand does mean a lot, and what you bring in. And I think there's room for everybody. I think there's room in the business for all. I mean, there's going to be big RTDs are just the big brands. Of course, they're getting into it because it makes sense. It's another level of their business to put out there in the world, and they'd be stupid if they didn't compete on that level. And then there's going to be a lot of people who fall off. You know, it's going to be like flavored vodkas. Like everybody got in, and then like, poof, it's going to come down, and then they'll just be like, you know, the survivors, you know, and who's going to be there. It really is. It's gonna happen that way. So I do have one last question before we wrap it up. So if you had some words of advice that you'd like to give others that are looking to launch their brand, I know there's probably lots of words of advice, but if you could think of like one major thing you're like, I wish I knew this, like when I was launching my brand. H, you want to go first?
I think, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you get very anxious for success, and not only out of enthusiasm for getting there, but often and more likely out of economic stress to get over the hump. You know, you get tired of bootstrapping. You get tired of not being able to do all the things you want to do because you don't have the capital to do them. And but my biggest point of advice would be just to be patient, because everything takes time. And if you're going to do it right, it's going to take time. And if you rush into those decisions, they're going to cost you more money and more time. And so it's hard to be patient when you want to run. It's like having this puppy, you know. You get, you know, but you've got to take a lot of deep breaths every day and be like, okay, right or left, right or left, all day long. And
that's great words.
And take those little wins. Every time you get a little win, take that as your energy, because that's going to propel you into your next little win, and then those are gonna build over time, and that's how it gets there. I remember when my buddy, high school buddy, and I were building our soup company back in 2002, and we sat down with a potential investor, and he was like, "It's going to take at least 10 years. 10 years. It's going to be 10 years to build a consumer product brand at least. So, you know, strap in for that." And I looked at Chuck, and I was like, "I don't want to do this for 10 years.
I want to win now."
You know, I was in my early 30s, and I was like, no way, man. I got things I want to do. But it's, you know, that always sticks in my head. I'm like, 10 years.
No, I think that's a good way. No brand is made overnight. You know, people just think, you know, products like, you know, Tito's just came out of nowhere. Tito's was around for almost like 15, 20 years before people ever knew it existed. So so it does take time. So I think that's great words of advice.
April, that vision is a long haul. Don't think you're going to get in and out. If you can't do it through a long haul, get out now.
Get out now.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that 100%. I definitely also was like, I can do it faster. And that proved to not be true. So I agree with that. I would say a couple things. One is, if you don't have a job, meaning if you've left your job and you need to make money fast and you are committed to like starting a business, I would say service over product. because again, you can have zero overhead and just make money on your skills and your time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you still have a job and you're starting to explore what it's like to start your brand, keep that job. Unless you're, again, totally miserable, pulling your hair out, keep the job, because having that financial security, to H's point, is really, really comforting. It's really hard to do this without a job. And Elaine, I've never explicitly said this to you, but when Elaine pulled me in for the Diageo work when she had moved on, that honestly, the relationship that I then had with Inspire and still have with Inspire and Enthuse, it's honestly thanks to that I even have a business today, because that relationship enabled me to do the work that I really enjoyed doing in terms of consulting, and also allowed me to work on my business and evolving the business. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. And honestly, it's like, I would advise that to anybody, is like, if you can do both things at once, I would really recommend it, because it saves a lot of angst and stress.
Yeah, I agree with that. If somebody's about to launch my own product, I'm not giving up my day job anytime soon.
Yeah.
Granted, my day job is being an entrepreneur and working for a lot of clients. But Anthony, thank you so much. You weren't the chatty one today. Yes, you were chatty, but it makes it much more fun when there are people that tune in and ask a lot of questions. So I always appreciate it. And I know Scott, thank you, Scott, for tuning in. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So this show will stay up. It will go online, be on Facebook for the next 2 weeks. And then it is on the Celebrate the Brand Ambassador YouTube station, as well as on my website, Deaf on the Rock. So you can find it in many different locations. But thank you so much, April and H. This has been fantastic. What a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having us. This was super awesome. And it was so nice to catch up with you both.
Yeah, thanks. Great to see you both and catch up. April, we've got to catch up after this too.
I know, totally.
All right, guys, I have a flight to catch. So
okay.
Thanks again, and have a great weekend.
All right, you too.
Bye. See you guys. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Okay, ending broadcast. There you go. How do I get off this? Bye. Bye.
Bye.